Three-time Grammy Award winner Ricky Cage's extensive and rich portfolio extends beyond being a music composer. He's also an environmentalist, a humanitarian, also the GQ Man of the Year 2023. That's a good one. And those who meet him always maintain that he's too humble for someone who grabs Grammy Award. Too many there. Three?
Yeah, now we are at three.
And still counting. Who knows?
Who knows?
Absolutely. First of all, very, very glad to meet you in person.
Yeah, thank you.
Last two
Great to be
interactions
with
were
you.
virtual.
Yeah.
And we have been talking about many issues that, surround your creative head. And this is going to be special as well.
I'm releasing a new version of the national anthem,
Yes.
and that is absolutely exciting. So I've released a couple of versions of the national anthem in the past. Like, for example, last year I did this version where I conducted a 100-piece British orchestra performing the national anthem, and that went completely viral, and and it was very appreciated. And I always wanted to conduct a symphony orchestra performing the national anthem, because at the end of the day, what is a symphony orchestra? It's all these different instruments like a violin, a bassoon, a timpani, a harp, and all these instruments have got their own unique personality. None of them sound like each other. They are completely unique by themselves. But at the same time, when you play all of them together, they sound beautiful together as an orchestra. And that is what India is all about, right? That you've got people with unique ideologies, ideas, thoughts, philosophies, religions, culinary tastes. So nobody is asking everybody to be homogeneous and be exactly the same. But somehow everybody has to work together in beautiful harmony, to make this country a better place.
Yeah. And as I said in my introduction, I mean, how often do you go not again when people say three-time Grammy Award? Because there we see on your portfolio an environmentalist, a humanitarian, so many feathers in your creative hat as well. So how does that work?
So everything boils down to music at the end of the day. So I'm a United Nations Goodwill Ambassador. I help them communicate their important messages when it comes to issues of our planet, when it comes to celebrating, the goodness of our planet. Everything happens through music. I work with various NGOs all over the world, and everything is through music. My environmentalism is also through music, because at the end of the day, how did music start? Music started off as sounds from nature, right? The sounds of the birds, sounds of the animals, sounds of the water flowing, sounds of the stream, sounds of the wind. And then later on, we human beings started imitating those sounds, through our human voice. And also we started pulling objects from nature and making musical instruments out of it, like bamboo flutes and boxes of seeds and animal skin as percussion instruments. And it's only actually for the last maybe 1,500 years that music has actually become academic with notes and say scales and rags and all of that stuff. Prior to that, music was just sounds of nature. And even if you go to the ancient tribes all over the world, indigenous populations all over the world, all their music is basically imitating sounds of nature. And they sing about nature. So that is why music and nature and music and the environment has always had a very, very strong connection. It's just that at a very early age, I found that connection and I made that connection my own.
What does it take to be sensitive enough as well as sensible enough to understand and to connect the dots that music is all in nature? You get inspired and therefore replicate in your own creative space, in your own ways. So where does that inspiration come from?
It came very naturally to me, like where you just hear music everywhere. Like, for example, while I'm walking over here, my footsteps itself in my mind is a rhythm.
Wow.
When I'm talking to you, I'm thinking of a background score, and I'm composing a background score for the composition. So for me, everything is basically music. It's just, you just have to find the music in it. Like one of the greatest composers on our planet, Beethoven, the German composer. So he has constantly said, and it's been very, it's been recorded time and again that through people, through books, and through literature, that he was very inspired by nature. In fact, he's got this symphony known as the Pastoral Symphony, where it has been widely recorded that he apparently composed that entire symphony sitting down in nature and listening to the sounds of nature and interpreting that through the language of music. Now, for example, in the visual arts form, you've got paintings and you've got photographs. Okay, so when it is a photograph, if I have to take a photograph of you, let's say, then I click a picture of you, and based on the lighting conditions and based on your facial expressions and all, I'll get a verbatim image of that millisecond, which will be on a photographic plate. Whereas if I'm making a painting of you, then it's open to interpretation a little bit, because then I'll be able to get a little bit, I'll talk to you for a while, I'll get a little bit of your soul, a little bit of your essence, a little bit of your personality into the painting, and the painting will be an interpretation of you. That is what Beethoven used to do. So he used to listen to the sounds of nature, and instead of course, there was no recording technology at that time. So instead of recording the sounds of nature and putting it onto a CD or whatever, he used to listen to the sounds of nature and interpret it through a flute, through a violin, through a through a bassoon, through a piano. And that is what is beautiful about music, that that you can actually interpret the sounds of nature through music, and that's what I try to do.
Beautiful analogy there about the photographs. What were the impressions that were lingering or hovering around your head, perhaps in your formative years, that facilitate the journey that you are as a creative soul as well as a music composer?
So for me, while growing up, I grew up in America for the first 6 years of my life. My father is a doctor, and he was a doctor over there. And I guess I think one of the most, I mean, two, three of the most important things were that my father, even though he was not a musician, he had a couple of musical instruments at home, which I would pick up and and I would play around with and things like that. And that was the first, the seeds of me becoming a musician. But he had a massive music collection of records and LPs and 8-track cartridges during those days, and cassette tapes. A huge music collection, not just of the hits of that time. Like during those days, it was Michael Jackson and Madonna and the Bee Gees and Prince and all of these artists. But he also had a whole lot of so-called obscure music from different parts of the world, from Africa, from Vietnam, Indian classical music. He had Celtic music, folk music from Japan. So he had all of these cassette tapes and LPs and stuff like that. And I would listen to this all day long. And so a lot of my education on different cultures around the world happened through music, through just listening to music in my father's collection. And also, we used to live in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a forest kind of an area. It was in a city, but in a city that was not densely populated. And there was a lot of wooded areas around our home. So we'd have a lot of animals that would enter our home. Not big animals, but the smaller animals like snakes and lizards and chameleons and frogs and rodents and rabbits and things like that. They used to enter our home very often. So that to me was very important in my formative years, because I started seeing personality in every single animal. I was drawn to these animals. I would look into their eyes, and and then I started realizing that at that young age that I started liking hanging around with animals than I did with people. So that was, so basically all of these things put together has made me what I am today.
The remarkable facet of your portfolio also is your academic inclination. You have a couple of degrees in dentistry there as well. You're a dental surgeon yourself.
Yeah.
How much of that facilitates your music?
Not at all, actually.
At all?
Not at all. So I did my dentistry because my father is a third generation doctor, and he was furious that I wanted to be a musician. So I had to make a deal with him that I would finish off a degree in dental surgery, and once I get that degree, he'll never question me again for the rest of my life. So I did that just to keep him happy. It has been absolutely of no use. In fact, it has been a problem actually, because I did that I took that dental seat, and I stole that dental seat from somebody who could have been a dentist and could have actually served the nation being a dentist. So there's one less dentist. And that person could have been a very good dentist. So there's one less dentist because I took that seat and I wasted it, and I did not use that education to serve, to serve people.
Never looked at it as a second option or second career, perhaps?
No, there was never a second option for me. It was always music and nothing else. That's all.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. There was no way I was going to be anything else in my life.
And now when you shine on the international platform the way you do, what does your father say?
He obviously loves it. He's very proud of me. Both my parents, they're very proud of me. And they did not admit that doing the dentistry was a wrong thing. But they're very proud of me. Because even while I was doing my dentistry, I'd become financially independent at that time itself. So through my music. So yeah, they're very proud of me.
And you gravitate towards environment as well. Does it come from the fact, as you narrated the story, that there were so many animals around you?
Definitely.
In your formative years, and you listen to the nature perhaps more than an ordinary person would, pay attention to. So does your concern for environment stem from the fact that you were surrounded by these animals and you were concerned about their music and their world, and which eventually found its way in your creations?
Yeah, definitely, because maybe if I'd grown up in a big city like New York or on New Delhi, or like in the middle of a city, or in the downtown areas of a city which are filled with concretization and buildings and things like that, maybe things would have been different. But that's the whole thing about development, right, in this world, that we've got a term called as sustainable development, which is a buzzword, that you're responsibly developing. But then that itself, there's a problem with that word right there, because if you have a word called sustainable development, then you're automatically assuming that development is always against the environment.
True.
So because nowadays that word of development has gotten hijacked, where when you think about development, you only think about New York skyline, you think about concretization, you think about roads, flyovers, where there's no trees in the picture, there is no nature in the picture. So much so that you've got a separate term called sustainable development, which talks about responsibly developing. So I believe that development in its own term should mean in collaboration with the environment and sustainably, developing. And there should be another term for bad development, which is what we have today. So coming back to your question, I lived in a place where development meant in collaboration with the environment, where houses were built out of wood, and in that particular region, and nobody was trying to drive away the animals from you. Nobody was trying to, there was not much concretization and all of that stuff. So I lived in a place like that, where people understood that we have to coexist with animals. And if you look at it, India as a country itself, India has lived in coexistence with our forests and wildlife for the longest period of time. And that's why we still have snakes sometimes entering our homes, or we have leopards being seen in colonies and things like that. And in Gujarat, you'll see lionesses walking into streets. And people in the West sometimes ask that, how do you have these animals walking around and all wild animals coming in? So my answer to them is that because we still have wild animals. We're not like your country, which has driven all of these animals to extinction, and where concretization and bad development has happened and has become total. So I lived in a place where it was not total, and I guess that's how my life became what it is today.
How does bifurcation happen in your head when it comes to Ricky Cage, the music composer, Ricky Cage, the environmentalist, Ricky Cage, someone who deals with children and their education via music? Is the bifurcation there for the lines are solid, or they get blurred all the time?
No, they're not. There's absolutely no bifurcation, because everything is music at the end of the day. So I would. It's just like saying that, let's say a mother, like you're bifurcating that, that you have to feed the child, you have to educate the child, and you have to clean up after the child, and you have to discipline the child. It's one thing basically. So it's the same thing with me. It's everything is under music basically.
All these, because the world is shrinking.
Yeah.
We have all the races intermingling with each other. How do you see the changing landscape of music?
I think, see, music right now has got genres of music, like there is rock music, there's pop music, there's hip hop, there is Celtic folk music, Tamil folk music, all of these different genres. Now, the only way for music to be exciting and the only way for music to remain vital is if you are expanding the genre boundaries of each genre. And the only way to do that is through collaboration and through bringing 2 or 3 different styles of music together. And that is the only kind of music that excites me. That you bring in a couple of styles of music together, so much so that you're not trying to make a rock song, you're not trying to make a pop song, you're just trying to make a good song. Now, if that good song, like if you're trying to make a good rock song, then it has to have drums, guitars, bass, and vocals. But if you're trying to make just a good song, then maybe throw in a violin into it, throw in a Zulu singer from Africa, throw in a pan flute from Europe. Then then you're just making a good song which emotionally connects with your audience. Collaboration is very important, not only to make the art form better, but also to bring cultures and bring people together. Because music is the best way to bring people together. Music is the most effective unifying force of showcasing to people that all of us are at the end of the day similar, and why do we need to fight with each other? Because, so I'll give you an example. There's this Algerian violin player who I was a huge fan of, watched his videos on YouTube. A lot of people recommended that I should collaborate with him. So I went to Algeria. I spent some time with him at a recording studio, and I was not able to communicate with him because he only knew Arabic. That is the only language he knew. I know English and bits of Hindi. These are the only 2 languages that I know. And bits of other languages, but not enough to speak. And so even our reference points were so different that even sign language was not working. So it was a very frustrating experience where I was not able to communicate with him about what I wanted to do. But then I started playing on the piano, and then he pulled out his violin and he just started playing along with me. And then we were communicating through music. And that ended up becoming the recording and the song that we actually released. That, it was just me playing something and him just responding to it with the violin. That's happened many times with tribal musicians in India, like in Araku Valley, even in Koraput in Araku Valley in Andhra Pradesh, then Koraput in Odisha. When I traveled over there and I met with the tribal, farmer musicians. So there also it was the same thing. Communication was very difficult. But then I would play a piece of music and they would just start singing along, or they would start singing something and I would respond to it with a little bit of music. And those collaborations are absolutely beautiful, where words are not used, while communicating. So the communication itself, when it comes to the collaboration, is through music, and those are the most meaningful collaborations. So I believe that music can be that extreme unifying force that brings people together, because sometimes you cannot get through to somebody through regular spoken languages or written language, or even politics or ideology and things like that. But if everything fails, then music will never fail.
Do you think this, in this day and age where we see conflicts all around the world, be it Russia, Ukraine, or Israel and Palestine, what is happening in Bangladesh, can music act as a unifier, perhaps to make a sharp commentary on what is happening, and perhaps can give us a respite from the situation, also perhaps can offer a solution in terms of acting as a unifier where other elements like peace and love and brotherhood coexist?
Music can definitely play a very, very strong unifying role in all of this. But at the same time, these conflicts that you mentioned are extremely complicated. And, uh, and also, music, unfortunately, has not been treated with the respect that it needs to be treated in terms of education within schools, like the way that we learn physics and we learn maths and we learn about civic studies and politics in school. We're not learning music in the way that we should be, because music should be on par with all of these subjects or maybe above it. I guess if music was taught from childhood at all of these places that you mentioned, where these conflicts existed, these conflicts wouldn't have been as harsh as it was, because children would have grown up to be far more sensitive, human beings, if they had an opportunity to learn music while they were younger.
You work with children extensively. Do you think we can form a palette for these young kids via music, uh, through which they can become sensitive, sensible, the much needed sensitive palette that is needed to be able to recognize that we are one at the end of the day?
So more than that, actually, I've got this project known as My Earth Songs. So My Earth Songs is basically 27 songs. Now it's 30 songs on sustainability. 30. And it's aimed at children from grades 1 to grade 8. So every song is about a different topic, but all the songs are very positive. They're very fun, and nothing's about doom and gloom and things like that. We've got a song called Plastic War, which is about plastic pollution. We've got another song which is called Gimme Your CO2, which is about trees, because trees at the end of the day, they're pretty much asking us, trees that give us your carbon dioxide and we'll give you back oxygen. So why are you trying to cut us down, because we're helping you out. And we've got another song called Carbon Footprint, which teaches children what a carbon footprint is. And the song goes that I'm going to leave a mark on this planet, but it's not going to be a carbon footprint, So those kind of songs we've got. Now that has made a huge difference. Currently we've crossed about 15 million textbooks across India over the last few years. And children, there's been a huge marked difference in the attitude of children who have been learning the songs in their schools, then ICSE and in CBSE. So huge marked difference in their attitude. A lot of principals, they message me on social media and they tell me that we teach My Earth songs in our school. And there was this open area which we were planning to build a building at, and the children protested against it and they told us to stop it. And almost every school that teaches My Earth songs, single-use plastics is completely banned. Parents message me saying that my child, I gave them a chocolate and they immediately saw that the wrapper is in plastic and they refused to eat the chocolate.
Wonderful.
So that is the kind of impact that it has, because children, they adopt things that are good immediately without any baggage. Like, for example, we adults, if somebody tells us don't use plastic spoons and straws, we'll be like, okay, what is the alternative? Like a paper straw, it'll disintegrate. It won't be good quality or whatever. We start thinking about that. Oh, how expensive is it going to be? Maybe the plastic is cheaper, so we should get that. Children don't think about all these things. They're like, what are you talking about? Plastic is choking the planet. We should stop using it immediately. Stop using it,
Wow.
So that is, and they shame the adults into action. So that is why I think children will play a very, very important role in the future of our planet.
You have been very vocal about climate change. You said
Yeah.
that it is human induced, it is for real, and we need to make an effort to be able to change the scenario. How children will be integrated in this cause via music so that they learn the fact that we must respect earth, we must respect the sound of the earth. When I say that, of course, the animals and the ecosystem. So how music is going to be, and of course your creations are going to help the cause.
I think sensitization, what children need right now is sensitization to what are the actual problems on our planet. That is very important. Like, for example, children nowadays, because of popular culture and popular media, they know exactly which are the Avengers movies or who the director of those movies are, or which character is coming in, or which character is a part of two or three movies or whatever. But what they do not know is that when you turn on a tap, where is that water coming from? From which river? Nobody knows. And that is something that affects us. Most children feel that that rice is born in a supermarket. It's not grown. Or now it's becoming even worse that rice is born on the Swiggy app. So it's not. So basically, if children actually go to a rural area and they go to a farmland where a farmer is toiling, over 2 or 3 hectares of land growing paddy and flooding those paddy fields and growing that paddy for a couple of weeks, before they can harvest it, children will not waste food because they'll know the amount of hard work that goes into each and every grain of rice for actually creating it. They're not going to think in terms of like, oh, we can afford it. We can buy 6 bowls of rice, so let's eat 1 bowl of rice and let's waste the rest.
Correct.
They're going to think, oh, that guy, he worked so hard to make that grain of rice, or that bowl of rice. So let's not waste it, because let's not get their hard work to waste. So I guess sensitization through music will be very important to teach children teach children about things that are relevant to them rather than things that are actually irrelevant to them.
For someone who has 3 Grammy awards already, how do you keep yourself nurtured, nourished, excited? Use the word excitement there. So how does that happen? How does one ensure that complacency should not find its way in the process of creativity?
That if you're very passionate about what you do, complacency is never going to happen because there's constantly things around you that inspire you to do music. And I'm constantly inspired. Like, for example, for me, let alone complacency, there are, at any given point in time, I've got about 10 or 11 ideas, but I've only got the bandwidth to maybe execute 2 or 3 of them. So that's the way it is. For me, I'm constantly bursting with ideas and things that I want to showcase to the world and things that I want to say to people through music.
Because you are a globetrotter yourself, you travel the world, how do you see Indian music evolve? Are we constantly getting Bollywood centric, or do you see changes are happening majorly and these changes are positive as well?
The changes are happening for sure. Changes are positive, but whether it's happening fast enough, nobody knows. But Bollywood is definitely here to stay because Bollywood is a thriving industry and the quality of music in Bollywood is very, very high. It's just that it's very monochromatic in terms of like, there are only 2 or 3 topics that songs are created in Bollywood, like love songs, item songs, party songs, that's about it. So I guess Bollywood itself needs to diversify a lot more and talk about topics that are very important. Like, for example, the Indian, if you look at the Indian film industry in as a whole, the films that are actually appreciated abroad, like for example, the film that won the Grand Prix at the Cannes Film Festival, or films that win at festivals like the Toronto Film Festival or Sundance or whatever, they're not at all the kind of films that are commercially successful in India. So why is that dichotomy happening? Why are the foreigners liking films that are not successful over here? Is it because we've got tastes that are different, or is it because the common person is not being exposed to those films?
Correct.
So that is something that we need to understand. That that why is it that is the marketing machinery for mainstream movies so big that there is no way for an artistically made movie to see the light of day?
Okay.
So that is something that we need to debate and we need to figure out that that how can we diversify our film industry so much so that an eclectic set of films reaches people rather than the same kind of stories and the same kind of topics and the same kind of over-the-top action sequences are being fed to people.
Do you think we as a community, we as a nation constantly seek validation through the Western eye? And the reason why I say this is because a prominent example that can be given is, of course, the late Lata Mangeshkar.
Yeah.
When she passed away, there was this much noise around her about her that she was not recognized by the Western world, especially the music world, the Grammys. What is your view on the same?
So I believe that we've got 1.4 billion people in India. So that's over 1/6 of the world's population. So I believe that with an audience of 1.4 billion people, we don't need to look elsewhere, for recognition. Like if we're craving for recognition, we don't need to look elsewhere. Because if you're reaching out to this particular audience, that is more than enough. So that is fine. But at the same time, I believe that we need to reach our culture to other people. I'm not talking about self-validation in terms of vanity, of winning awards and all of that stuff. But at the same time, it's very, very important that our culture does not remain just with us. Our culture is appreciated by people all over the world, because only then the world will have a better understanding of ourselves. Now, a better understanding of ourselves cannot happen through politics. It cannot happen through politicians. It cannot happen through celebrities. It can only happen through art. We understand the French better because we know their art. We understand other European cultures because of their art. We understand Japanese better because of their art. So similarly, other people will understand us better if we have quality art and we produce quality art and we ourselves encourage that quality art. Like how I mentioned with the classical scenarios and all of that stuff, and better quality movies and artistic movies. We create this art and we spread our culture all over the world, and we get people to understand us better because we are making good quality art and they understand us through our art.
In this country, especially in this culture, the moment you're polite, they say, "Oh, he's too humble," as if being humble is a huge virtue. You are ambassador for kindness as well. You have been nominated there. So how do you see that aspect vis-a-vis Indian culture?
I think Indian culture is about humility. I think 100%. It's just that the mainstream industry is not as humble as it should be. But what I'm saying is that in Indian culture is all about humility, about respecting your elders, about respecting knowledge, about respecting people who teach you, and constantly being learners your entire life. Constantly understanding that what you do unto others, you can expect that to be done unto you, whether it's good or bad. Doing your duty without thinking of reward. So I think that itself, doing a duty without thinking for reward is humility at the end of the day, right? Where you're not thinking of the end result, you're not thinking of being gratified, but you're just doing your duty and you're serving people. So I think Indian culture has always been about humility.
My last question. We touched upon many facets about you being a composer, you being an environmentalist, you being a humanitarian, and the teacher as well. Of course, GQ Man of the Year. How does that happen? How do you keep yourself? Is this a projection that is needed for an artist of your stature, or does it come inherently to you?
See, the GQ Man of the Year, I guess they gave it to me because of my work in sustainability. Because the GQ Man of the Year, at least in my understanding, is not just about fashion or style or whatever. Because it cannot be just about that simply because I'm constantly. In fact, it's a huge coincidence that you asked me that question. Because if you go onto my Instagram or go on the internet and you look at my photographs from the GQ Man of the Year, it's the exact same suit that I'm wearing.
Really?
Yeah, it's the exact same suit. So because I rewear my clothes multiple times, because I believe that the way to combat pollution, the way to combat climate change is to buy things with a lot of deliberation and a lot of mindfulness and constantly reusing them, as I mentioned. So for me, this particular suit, I've worn it at least for about 25 to 30 different events, and you'll see them in so many photographs on my social media.
Conscious, sharp commentary there.
No, definitely, because I believe that you have to double down on the fact that that you are this use and throw economy is not working anymore, because it's just polluting landfills and making landfills worse and worse and choking up the planet. So what we need to do is that sustainable fashion is good to an extent, but what we need to do actually is buy things with a lot of deliberation, as I said, and constantly keep reusing it and reusing it till the time you cannot use it anymore. So that's what we need to do, and that's what I try to portray through my fashion, constantly reusing. And the GQ folks know about that, but even then they gave me the award. So I guess it is because of, because of the work that I've been doing or what I stand for, and I'm very thrilled to have it. And the aim in my life has never been to actually win awards. The aim has always been to create good art. But winning awards is very appreciated because when you win an award, it becomes a platform for you to do bigger and better things and to reach your music to a wider audience.
Independence Day is approaching, of course, and you stand out like because you believe in independence in your creative space, in your professional space. What does independence mean to you, and how important that facet is for a country to grow, for an individual to prosper, and how do you link the two?
So I think being independent, especially when it comes to art, is very important because only then you'll be able to create art that is representative of who you are. Right. So as soon as you lose your independence when it comes to art, that is where art no longer remains art. Art becomes a job. Like you find a whole lot of fine artists like painters and things like that, or sculptors. They are just doing commissioned art, like for hotels or for for galleries and for murals and things like that. So they end up not creating anything that they themselves want to create. You see that happening with a lot of music directors too. In India, it's become a trend that that if you're younger and you want to get into music, then the end goal is that I want to do music for a Bollywood film, and then their entire career goes by. Even the top music directors, that every single piece of music that they've created has been dictated by somebody else. It has been dictated either by a filmmaker based on their sensibilities, or based on a script, or based on a producer, or sometimes even based on an actor. So every single piece of music has been created based on somebody else's sensibilities, and they're not creating music that they themselves want to create. Sometimes I ask them a question that, okay, you want to create love songs. When was the last time you created a song inspired by your girlfriend or inspired by a wife? No. So they've never done that. I'm like, okay, you feel so strongly about this, and you're a musician. Why isn't your art reflecting that? So that is very, very important. So independence when it comes to art is extremely important, because that's the only way you will grow as a human being.
May you flourish in your collective space.
Thank you so much.
And may you as well flourish in your individual space to make India proud on the global map. Thank you so
Thank
much
you so much.
for talking to us.
All my very best.